Honorable Adongo.
I want to make this very clear, that the $1 billion that was given to Ghana was called the Rapid Credit Facility. Rapid. It can be done in 5 days. So if you did it in 3 weeks, you know why. Other countries access it in 10 days because it's a rapid credit facility with modifications to accommodate the exigencies of the time. And so if you did it in 3 weeks, some people's turnaround time was just 1 week. Mr. Speaker, the ask was read, particularly looking at the circumstances under which we find ourselves and looking through the measures that have been undertaken across the globe to revive various economies that are challenged by COVID. You found that Ghana was the only country that introduced austerity in the midst of COVID. And I have never seen a country trying to revive from COVID that wants to introduce austerity measures and hope that you'll be able to get out of COVID. As a matter of fact, the measures were introduced far and deeper into COVID, and our recovery will take a longer and more painful period to achieve. My honorable ranking member on finance has spoken extensively about the budget deficit. But Mr. Speaker, the budget deficit and the manipulations over the years have always been my pet subject when the budget comes to this floor. And today I intend to demonstrate that our budget deficit has been massaged by 25 billion Ghana cedis. Mr. Speaker, the minister responsible for finance reported that our foreign financial deficit was only 31 million Ghana cedis. 31 million Ghana cedis and nothing more and nothing less. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the budget statement itself, particularly under Appendix 2A, which you find under paragraph page 205, it makes it quite clear that the loans that were contracted for our projects, which loans amounted to about 6 billion Ghana cedis. Mr. Speaker, project loans cannot be used to amortize loans. They must be spent on specific projects, and there is no way you can reduce your public, your deficit financing by using that to pay. So 6 billion unequivocal amount of money cannot be found there. Mr. Speaker, there is also program loans. And I was very sad to see a report in the budget that says that our program loans was only 388 million. Mr. Speaker, in the minister's own document, and here I refer to Appendix 12B, which is Performance Summary of Funding Sources, and you can find that under page 275. Mr. Speaker, this page is listing all the program loans that we contracted and spent here. And this is the minister himself speaking in page 275. He says that we got an amount of 1.3 billion from the World Bank, IPF, and Africa Development Bank, out of which we spent 512 million Ghana cedis. He says we also got another $65 million, which amounted to 377 million, out of which we spent 343 million. He says that there's also a fast-track COVID-19 facility of about 130 million from the World Bank. That amount we spent it entirely, and it is about 754 million. He says that IMF gave us the equivalent of 585 billion, 5,855 million, out of which we spent 5,566 million. Again, he says the Africa Development Bank also gave us 409 million, out of which we spent 389 million. Mr. Speaker, the minister said the European Union also gave us 504 million. We spent the entire amount. Mr. Speaker, how can all this put together, somebody will look us in the face and say that he only got 388 million? I can't imagine this. And this is House of Records. I don't know who did that to my big brother. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, the entire amount, if you put all this together, from program loans that the minister himself is reporting, is 7.5 billion Ghana cedis. That money has disappeared from our deficit. And we are now dealing with 388 million, which creates a shortfall of 31 million foreign financing of our public debt. Mr. Speaker, that cannot be the case. Mr. Speaker, we are also aware that this House approved $3 billion, out of which we said $2 billion of the Eurobond money should be spent on the budget. You indicate in your report that you have spent all that money, and yet you say that $2 billion is worth 7.5 billion Ghana cedis. What exchange rate is that? Mr. Speaker, the exchange rate that they themselves use give us our Eurobond utilization on the budget at 11.590 billion. Mr. Speaker, if you put all that together, our foreign financing of the budget comes to an amount of 25.155 billion Ghana cedis, and not 31 million. Mr. Speaker, if you add that to our domestic financing of the budget of 45 billion, Mr. Speaker, we did a deficit of 70.798 billion Ghana cedis. This excludes the matters that my honorable colleague raised regarding off-balance sheet items. These are real cash that you collected and spent, for which you have actually reported in certain aspects of your budget. But where it mattered most, it did. And Mr. Speaker, the budget deficit effectively comes to 18.6 billion on a cash basis. Without adding below or above the line or middle line, it comes to 18.6 billion. How can you look us in the face and do this to us? These are monies we have spent. What it means is that expenditure totaling about 25 billion have disappeared from our expenditure framework. Completely disappeared from our framework. And these are expenditures related to COVID-19 program expenditure. Mr. Speaker, the whole world is worried about transparency in the utilization of donor funds that came to fight COVID. Even accounting for the money you spend, and you are taxing us to take more. Mr. Speaker, these are very dangerous times for these people, for our people of Ghana. And we cannot continue on this path. This financial engineering must stop. And Mr. Speaker, this House must insist that the right things are done in order that we get credibility as the political class of our country. We cannot continue on this path. Mr. Speaker, somebody will tell you that some of the monies was used for amortization. Mr. Speaker, this House approved an amount for amortization. We approved $1 billion for amortization. And Mr. Speaker, the minister himself explains in paragraph 165, page 38, that out of the Eurobond money, about 523 billion was used to buy back the 2023 issuance. And about 476 billion of the remaining amount of money was spent on domestic liability management. Mr. Speaker, that exhausts the $1 billion. But Mr. Speaker, in the budget, when it comes to deficit, they report amortization of 14 billion Ghana cedis in order to sweep up the money they spent from borrowing. Mr. Speaker, how can $1 billion metamorphose into 14 billion Ghana cedis? That cannot happen. And this is the kind of gerrymandering that we are facing, and this is what they use to become better managers of the economy. These are better manipulators of the economy, and that cannot happen. Mr. Speaker, I want to make the point that the minister also reports on our public debt. And here again, I want to say that our public debt was conspicuously understated by the records of this House. And here I will prove it. Mr. Speaker, if you look at Appendix 10B, which you find in page 274, it says that there is a schedule they have provided to this House. And that schedule lists all the financial commitments or the loans that we borrowed in this year. Mr. Speaker, I want to go to that document. Their old document, it's not mine. It says new commitments. Appendix 10B, page 249 and page 260. It says new commitments in 2020. These are additional loans we borrowed in 2020 some of which were drawn down, just like the Eurobonds were all drawn down and spent, and should go into our public debt. Mr. Speaker, the matters are referred to regarding the COVID-19 expenditures and the program loans are all conspicuously missing in this appendix, which is talking about our new laws. Even if we want to play Darga with Ghanaians, we can play Darga with $1 billion rapid credit facility from IMF. How can we delete that figure from the list of commitments? $1 billion, Mr. Speaker. All the other items that I raised, European Union spending, the Africa Development Money, World Bank money, are conspicuously missing from our debt profile. So, Mr. Speaker, an amount equivalent to 7.5 billion Ghana cedis has been shaved off our public debt. Mr. Speaker, if you add those numbers, our public debt is now 299 billion, threatening to hit 300 billion. Mr. Speaker, that gives us a debt to GDP of 78%. So don't be roaming around with 76% because it doesn't exist. What you owe and the debt to GDP is 78%. Mr. Speaker,
Do you know what you are talking about?
I listened to my venerable leader trying strenuously to explain that if they remove the financial sector bailout cost, they remove the energy sector cost from our public debt, our debt to GDP will now be lower. Mr. Speaker, that GDP itself benefited from the banking sector cleanup. When you spend that money on banking sector cleanup, deposited collected that money as income and spent that money to create income. Those who also collected it also spent it and it created streams of income. We call it the multiplier effect of income. Have you discounted the multiplier effect of your GDP? If you did, you realize that man of that. If you hadn't spent that, your GDP would have been a question for GDP. That would give you a debt to GDP close to 100%. So don't even try. It is a very, very rudimentary analysis of economy that you can just eliminate something that created the GDP, but keep the benefits in the GDP and strike a difference and get a balance. It doesn't happen like that. It is important that you report the true state of our affairs. It's in shambles.
You have been forgiven.
Mr. Speaker,
You've been forgiven.
I also listened to the Minister responsible for Finance say that Ghana's gross international reserve was about 8.4, and because it's about 8.4, Ghana is doing better, and that's why there is stability. Mr. Speaker,
What are you talking about?
across the globe, gross international reserves are meaningless. The reason is that gross international reserves are not for you. There are people whose liabilities are occurring in the next 6 months. You must take them and put them aside because it's not for you. When you take all that away, including our debt portfolio, the interest payments you are going to make, we need to exclude all of that. Then you get your net international reserve. And Mr. Speaker, our net international reserve is deteriorating. We moved from 5.5 billion in 2019 December to 4.5 billion. Mr. Speaker, if you add, there are some vulnerability items that anybody looking at your net international reserve should be worried about. And Mr. Speaker, I want to list some of them. Your outflows, investment that in Ghana that they can liquidate in short period. Your financial derivatives, your portfolio investments that can be reversed within a short period. Mr. Speaker, those numbers alone are close to 6 billion. In other words, if all these people came for our money, we don't have dollars to give them. We have only 4.5 billion to cover a responsibility of over 6 billion, and we are here celebrating this level of vulnerability. Mr. Speaker, the economy is in shambles. But Mr. Speaker, my good colleague says that the banking sector is in good shape, but I want to talk about what I refer to as policy deception. There is serious policy deception. Mr. Speaker, how can you tax us COVID tax? COVID health tax will give you 899 million. But your government of Ghana expenditure on the health sector is only 13 billion. 13 million. So what happens to the rest of the money? You are not taxing us for COVID. You are taxing us to clean up your mess. Mr. Speaker, they talk about Agenda 111. And yet there is a paragraph that talks about, a table that talks about Ghana, a government flagship program. Mr. Speaker, conspicuously missing in your flagship is Agenda 111. In fact, conspicuously missing is the health sector. So if you have not budgeted adequately for it and it is so important to you, why deceive the people of Ghana?
Honourable Member, your time is up. I gave you the time.
Mr. Speaker, some people had more time than they can write. Others can write more than the time.
Honourable Member,
Thank you very much.
share what you have with others so that you don't run out of time. Thank you.
Okay. So, Mr. Speaker, another policy deception is road.
After your time is up, you are introducing another. I thought you were concluding. Your 5 minutes, 15 minutes. Your 15 minutes is
I want to conclude on
conclusion. Very well.
In conclusion.
They are budgeting only 90 million for sanitation. Meanwhile, they are collecting 311 million from taxes. So the money is not meant for Bola. Mr. Speaker, I come from a place where they keep telling us that they are going to build the Palgu Dam. You have only budgeted for 42 billion for the Palgu Dam. What type of dam can you build with 42 billion? Out of a project that is worth